the first Christmas I had Stallone and Schwarzenegger and this one and that one and Sharon Stone and, Whoopi Goldberg and all these people that were coming to the restaurant. Every head of every studio would come in. So it had this kind of, whoa, in 1988, something other than the fine dining restaurant at the Intercontinental down in Kihei, there was something new.
Welcome to Wasabi Interviews, where we talk to interesting people in Hawaii, Japan, and beyond. And today we are joined by an award-winning chef, restaurateur, cookbook author, caterer. I could keep going and going, but coming to us from Maui is Chef Beverly Gannon. Welcome.
Aloha.
It's a pleasure to talk to you. I especially love talking to chefs.
Does it make you hungry?
Oh, I'm always hungry. I want to talk to you about, your restaurants and how you ended up here in Hawaii and Hawaii Regional Cuisine and all that stuff. But briefly, I'd like to first get into, what's the situation now with your restaurants? What is available? Right now we're talking in July of 2020. What are you doing? How have you adapted?
What am I doing?
Mm-hmm.
I'm drinking a lot. More than I've probably made up for 20 years of not drinking. Right now, honestly, I made the decision, as brutal as it was, that I'm not going to open up until I see all the hotels open. Yeah. I'm going to give it 4 weeks after the hotels open to make sure that the hotels stay open. Sure. The businesses are staying open. Because the death sentence for restaurants is if we all opened up with the social distancing, which is taking away half of our seating, and then we get an outbreak because the tourists are coming in and we have to close again. Yeah. But once you have to close again, the reality of opening up again is pretty brutal. So, I've been retired for almost 5 months now. I'm looking at new menus and doing a few little home cooking stints so I don't lose my creativity in cooking and ideas. But I also am looking at it as, for me, it's this great little respite. I've worked all my life. I've worked for the last 36 years, pretty hardcore. Yeah. So I've actually had a vacation on Maui because usually if I take a break, I get on a plane and leave. Well, haven't been doing that. So it's been great. The beaches are empty. I mean, it's the good news, bad news, right? Sure. There's no traffic. The beaches are pristine. But then I've had to put 140 people out of work. And for me, I want to make sure that when we come back, I bring them back to work and I don't have to lay them off again. Right. Our reality, I think, in the restaurant business is that, I'll probably bring back half of my crew because I'm going to have half the amount of tables and chairs. So I'll be half the amount of business unless I can somehow extend my premises, which I'm looking to do. But will the people be here to even warrant that? Yeah, that's the scary part. Yeah. And so that we have formed this Maui restaurant hui, which we started a couple of months ago. It was like a few of us chefs talking together, kind of how Hawaii Regional Cuisine started. A few of us were talking, and then they talked to a few more people, and then a few more people wanted to join. And we have over 100 members, restaurant members now, kind of joining forces as far as what's happening with you, what are you doing, what mask are you going to use, how are you social distancing? And for us, it's been, we all cry on each other's soup, what is happening, when are you going to open? And pretty much most of the restaurants on my level, like a Mama's Fish House, Plantation House, TS Restaurants, none of us are going to open until we see a firm opening of the hotels.
Yeah.
Because as much as I love my local clientele, it maybe barely, but not really pays my everyday nut.
Mm.
So, and in this case, it wouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're just sitting on our hands.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's tough. No, I've noticed many restaurants here, of course, on Oahu too, that they're just closed, and it seems like they're more or less have the same plan that you have. Wait until things start reopening, see that people are coming back in, and then, go back to as normal as possible as they can.
Right. Well, and the problem for us, we're only 160,000 residents, right? Our tourist business is gone. Our local tourists, which we call the people who come here and stay during the winter, they're gone. So when you start paring down the people who are going to walk in your restaurants, it's a really small amount of people who actually live here. So we are seriously dependent, at least restaurants of my size and bigger, of having that tourist business here.
Yeah.
I wish it were different. We all talk about it. We wish it were different. We wish we could sustain ourselves. We are not going to be able to sustain these islands on produce, and I don't know what they think we're going to go to, but you have to have it. But controlled tourism would be fabulous. No more hotels being built. We have enough. If we really looked at Maui, I mean, I've lived here 40 years. So if we really looked at Maui from when I moved here and there was one traffic light, and getting into Kihei was 2 lanes at the beach. We always kept saying, when are we going to kill the golden goose? We're going to kill the golden goose. It's building. It's too much building. It's too much traffic. It's too much this. Well, I think now we're in a position to really reevaluate in the reopening of the island for tourism. With all the hotel rooms and all the vacation rentals and everything else that's here, it brings in way enough tourists to sustain us right now. We need more affordable housing. We don't need more hotels. So get me on my soapbox. I'm ready.
Yeah. Well, I totally agree. I mean, right now is a time to rethink how we can do things better, especially for the people that are here living right now, right? So
Exactly. And restaurants, we're the heart and soul, even the restaurant and the hotel business too, of keeping money in the farmers' pockets and the fishermen's pockets and the ranchers' pockets. We buy everything from them. The local business isn't going to sustain those huge farms that have opened up to give us what we need locally, right? So, it's all question mark now. I'm drinking having some wine.
It's okay.
Better.
Are you doing any sort of takeout or like, takeaway meals or something like that at your restaurants?
Actually, we are at Hali'imaile General Store on 4th of July weekend. We decided to do meal kits. And so it started then, and then every week we do 3 to 4 different meal kits. And what that is it's not a hot to go meal. It is everything you need to prepare a meal for 2 to 3 people. It's a large portion for 2. So if you had 3, you could feed them. And it's short ribs with mashed potatoes and roasted island vegetables. And so it's in a cryovac bag, right? So you can either microwave it, put it in a boiling water, take it out and put it in the oven, but it's ready to heat meals. So you could actually pick up 3 of those meals at one time. And we've tested them. I mean, they'll last, because it's all kind of vacuum sealed. They'll last 7 to 10 days in your refrigerator.
Nice.
So that's the good news. The other good news is you can also buy wine with it. Take it out. And we actually got our liquor department and our liquor commissioners and the county to say it was okay if we sell a meal. Then what it allows us to do is sell off our wine cellars.
Mm-hmm.
So it gives us cash in our pocket.
Right.
And basically all of these kind of things are just giving us some kind of cash flow.
Yeah.
It was big last month. Last month, June,
Mm-hmm.
my gross for the month was $4,000.
Wow.
My gross for a day is usually 3 or 4 times that.
Yeah.
So if that gives everybody an idea of how dire our situation is, that's kind of where it is.
Yeah, yeah. And are those meal kits something that you were already thinking about, or did you basically just come up with that since this whole pandemic started?
No, I don't want, I do catering.
Oh, okay.
And I think the reason the meal kits kind of worked for us, I didn't want to do to go because my restaurant is shut down. The electrical, gas, anything I could shut down. And even shut down, you get bills from those companies. But my catering kitchen is open. And I know how to make food that you can reheat and it tastes good. I worked for Hawaiian Airlines for 20 years doing airline food, the best airline food they ever had on Hawaiian. But I know how to make things that can reheat successfully. So that's what gave us the idea is, we have cases of ribs and short ribs and things in our freezer that, we can take out, cook, put in a bag, you can take it home, and it just helps, put some dollars in the bank.
Definitely. And, right now people do feel more comfortable still like taking it back home, preparing it at home. And even if they buy it outside, right, takeaway, they want to do it at home because it's just safer there. So,
and you can pick it up at the store and you can pick up a cookbook at half price or some t-shirt price or all the guys that we have on the shelves we're selling, 40 or 50% off. So, it's a fire sale right now.
Right.
Anything to keep a few of the people working that I have working, and kind of keeping us in everybody's mind too, we will be back. How, I'm not sure, but we will be back, but I'm not going to do it and jeopardize it continuing to operate for another 33 years.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think many businesses here, including ourselves, we have to think about the long term rather than let's get back to it as soon as possible. We have to, be a little patient in order for us to last, like you said, 30 years or whatever. So
right. And the hard thing I think now is that with that additional money for the employees ending the end of July, we're honestly, nobody wants to come back to work. They're making more money not working right now than if we were to put them back, but that's going to end. Exactly. And then I'm still probably a couple of months into, rehiring people back. And it's tough. I mean, I don't care if they call me a dragon lady or I'm a bitch or she's, I want to put my employees back to work, but I'm going to make sure we're successful at that, which means not going to jump the gun, not going to bring everything back too fast. So that's my plan.
Right. Yeah. Well, I will include all the relevant information in the description, all that, links and all that. So people, in Maui and all that, they can go check out the meal kits and keep up to date with everything you're doing. So. And
you can buy crab dip by the Pioneer Court too.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah. Well, if you don't know the crab dip story, but that's big if you can take that home and heat it in your own oven.
Well, you're making me curious about the story there, but so
it's the only recipe I don't give out.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. All right. Well then, I have been to Maui a couple times. I unfortunately have yet to try your crab dip, but hopefully in the future I can pass by.
Yeah.
So I want to rewind a bit and go back to like how you ended up in Hawaii. I know you were originally from, I think you were, before you came to Hawaii, you were in Texas, if I remember correctly. And then you
I grew up in Dallas, and in the short fast kind of. I got out of college and I happened into a job being the road manager for Liza Minnelli in 1973. On that tour, I did the Liza with a Z tour. And on that tour was a production manager named Joe Gannon.
Mm-hmm.
Craziest guy I'd ever met in my life. If there was a list of who I'd end up with, he was at the bottom. So I then went on to work for a few more entertainers. He ended up in his career, he produced and lighting, designed and directed everybody from Alice Cooper to Neil Diamond to
Wow.
Earth, Wind & Fire to Diana Ross. He was the premier stage concert producer in the country for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
We really met each other in 1980 in Las Vegas. He walked in the door. It was like, okay, I'm done. This is the guy who knew why. And that was January 1980. He brought me on a vacation July of 1980 to Maui. And he was still heavily involved in his business. And he kept saying, if I could retire to Maui, I really want to retire. So I'm moving to LA to be with him. He has 4 teenagers. And I'm thinking, LA, or do we try Maui? So we came for a week. We stayed 3 before we left. I rented a house for 6 months and said, let's see if that extra 5-hour plane ride doesn't make any difference to you. Because he traveled around the world all the time.
Mm-hmm.
That was almost 40 years ago. Yeah. So I moved here with his youngest daughter without him. His partner, or the person that he worked for a lot, was a guy named Chef Gannon, who had a house on the beach in Maui and entertained a lot. And guess who started cooking? And I started because I wasn't working. I was raising a 14-year-old. I was going to visit Joe back and forth to the mainland. Mm-hmm. And in my spare time, I started going to like Fuchs and Okas, these little supermarkets, grocery stores in town mm-hmm. that had taro and burdock and lotus root. And I'm going, what is this stuff? And I just bought some cookbooks and started cooking and found out that I was good at it. Because I had also had a history, when you travel with entertainers, you eat in the best restaurants and drink the best wines. And so I kind of had that as a background. And I started cooking at Chef's house when everybody would come in here. You know, Maui, we used to call Maui Wood, because the entertainment business in the early 80s and probably through to the early 90s, every major entertainer, studio head, you know, you name it, they were here. And they would all end up at Chef's for dinner. And I would cook for them. And then they'd have friends who would come in and say, well, my friend's coming and they're renting a house. Could you cook for them? So it really is how my little business got started here. In the meantime, Joe's gone. You know, the first 8 years we were here, he was home maybe 3 or 4 of those years because his work had him constantly traveling. So it had me constantly cooking. And I was doing it out of my house kitchen. And then I put a commercial kitchen in my garage.
Wow.
And then I got contacted by somebody who did corporate events here and asked if I would be willing to do that, having no idea what I was getting myself into. Mm-hmm. You know, and the next thing I know, I'm doing a sit-down dinner for 300 people. I don't have a clue what I'm doing. Uh-huh. Somehow I survived myself. I got tired when I moved the second dumpster into the garage, next to the garage at our house. I thought, it's time to get it out of here.
Right.
Somebody told me this little store around the corner from where we lived was going to be up for rent. So I passed the store all the time. It was this falling down it was the old general store that was the camp store for Maui land and pineapple.
Wow.
And it's where their workers from across the street from the little village would come in with a token. They had a number on a token. Wow. And they would come in and shop, and they would charge it to their token number, and then it would be taken out of their paycheck. Mm-hmm. So I walk in, and the place is just a dump. But I called the person who was leasing it, Maui Pine. That night they came over at 8:00, and he goes, "Are you sure you want to do this?" And I said, "Well, I can do a little gourmet takeout food shop, you know, and it's in the middle of nowhere. I mean, at that particular time, there was not a map anywhere that had Hali'imaile Road on the map. It was non-existent. So I talked him into renting me the place. It was $500 a month. I figure I'm going to slap a coat of paint on it, make it look really pretty, and then be able to do my catering out of there, but be able to have people come and stop and get sandwiches or salads. Or I was doing it like the Oakville Grocery in Napa, which is the same kind of vision as this big old tin store. And it took us about 9 months building it. My husband got involved, came home one time. I mean, he's back doing his job. He has no idea what I'm doing. And he came home and he gets his set designer involved.
Wow.
And then slapping a coat of paint on it to all of a sudden it was like a production. And the day we opened, I had 30 seats. It was deli cases with turkey, ham, but I also had stuffed peppers and pasta to go or chicken to go, way ahead of my time. But the day we opened, 150 people walked in the door and wanted to sit down and eat. Wow. They wanted to be served. Yeah. And I was a gourmet takeout food shop. So literally overnight, I had 2 people the first night, and people are there and we're trying to get them their food because we're heating the pre-made food that's in the deli case and trying to serve it to them at their table. We had gotten a liquor license because it was so inexpensive to get one. And I figured you can have a drink while you wait to get your to-go food. But we're then serving food. I had no waiters, no waitresses, no dishwasher, a couple of guys who worked in catering with me. And literally overnight, it became a restaurant. And we went to a blackboard. You know, we had like the things that we were going to serve pre-cooked. We started cooking to order. I had 2 people get up from their chairs the first night and say, "You're in big trouble. Give me a pad and a piece of paper, pad and a pencil, and I'm a waiter. I'm going to help you." Now, and they did that, and one of them did that for 17 years for me.
Wow.
So the story, I don't know that you could make up this story. I had never worked in a restaurant. I was a caterer, a self-taught caterer pretty much. And, you know, the rest is history because of my husband's connections with the entertainment business. You know, the first Christmas I had Stallone and Schwarzenegger and this one and that one and Sharon Stone and, you know, Whoopi Goldberg and all these people that were coming to the restaurant. Every head of every studio would come in. So it had this kind of, whoa, in 1988, something other than the fine dining restaurant at the Intercontinental down in Kihei, there was something new. I think the restaurants, maybe Mama's was here and Longy's, but I don't think there were too many. Gerard's maybe in Lahaina. Other than that, you know, and we literally put Hali'imaile on the map because now it's on every map.
Right.
And we have our own traffic light.
Yay!
I mean, it used to be people would get so lost coming up to us because it was just this dark turn down Sugarcane to get to the restaurant, right?
Yeah.
And there were no cell phones at the beginning.
Right.
And they get to a gas station and call and go, we're in wherever we are, and they missed the turn and how to get them there. And then cell phones came along and it got a little better with GPS. Then we got the traffic light, which part of me didn't want because it's like, oh, it's getting too big, you know, and it's growing too much and I went, you're going to have to sit at this light until it's got all those computer things. So the minute you pull up for the left turn, it turns and you go left and you're right at the restaurant. It's the best.
Oh, that's a wonderful story.
So that's kind of the story.
Yeah. Oh, that's I love it. I mean, and in the 80s, you know, when you're having Stallone and Schwarzenegger, these are like the stars of the stars. They are at the peak of their stardom at that time. That's crazy.
I I mean, it was pretty much, Elton John. I mean,
Yeah.
you name it, they were finding the restaurant because it was like we're not hip anymore, but it was the hip, cool place to go to
Right.
that everybody knew they were going to see somebody that they would recognize, some star or music person or sitting in the seat next to them.
Very cool. So
Yeah.
I can't help but see kind of a connection between what you did there and then your eventual connection with the Hawaii Regional Cuisine movement, in that, like, it seems like you were serving a kind of need, a kind of gap. And then I've interviewed Chef Alan Wong as well, and it seems like he was seeing a kind of lack in the local cuisine here. And so, that movement seemed to kind of emerge from that, a similar sort of, I guess you would say, lack in that specific type of cuisine. I'm not perhaps saying it very eloquently right now, but I would you say that there is some connection there? Like, what eventually would lead to your connection with the Hawaii Regional Cuisine?
Well, here's what happened.
Yeah.
So I opened the general store in 1988.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to tell you that I would not serve a tomato in the restaurant. I just nixed it.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't get a good tomato.
Oh.
We, back in those days, the person who then became an herb farmer for me, he was growing flowers and herbs, and everything was getting exported to the mainland. So what Hawaii Regional Cuisine did is it brought together, and I kept raising my hands going, why am I here? I mean, there's Peter Merriman and Alan Wong and Roy Yamaguchi, and I'm going, I'm this little restaurant person in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
But what I was doing is I was finding a farmer down the street who grew eggplant, bring it to me, asking people who would come in the restaurant, whatever you have local. Then I found the Maui Farmers Co-op, and I would get things from them. So I think the group, just like the Maui Restaurant Hui, it was founded because we had a need for all of us in the same boat to start talking to each other.
Right.
From whether it was a hotel chef or a standalone restaurant chef. And I mean, oh my God, those were the most fun meetings back then. I have to say, I learned so much because I was a newbie. I didn't have a history like a lot of these guys did of, working in I've only worked in my own kitchen.
Yeah.
So, now I go and I guest chef in somebody else's kitchen, but I had never worked in a restaurant kitchen or understood any of that. I was flying by the seat of my pants. Yeah.
And Chef Alan Wong, and I'm sure many of the other chefs, are pretty fun people. So
we used to all be so much fun. I don't know that we all gotten kind of old now, but no, we still have fun together. We do. We still have fun. But in getting together, the main purpose of it was to start these connections with the fishermen and the farmers and the ag people so that they would start growing what we wanted to serve. And I have to say, when you're first starting out, it's like, oh, okay, is this going to happen? Is this going to really work? And then it starts working.
Yeah.
And then I would call, all of a sudden I can get strawberries that are grown on Maui. I can get asparagus. I have a farmer calling me saying, what do you want me to grow for you? Or, hey, I have rutabaga and I have parsnips. Do you want some? Forget lemons, limes, oranges, avocados all day. Those are coming in the back door. And it was just people dropping it off saying, here, use this. And I go, here, go have something to eat.
Right.
So I think that's what mostly that group did. And then when we all figured out, and we all have different styles and different ways. I mean, I have to say that like Roy and Alan are more really, they take what are really the local Hawaiian ingredients and turn them into something fabulous. So somebody like Peter Merriman, he takes the local ingredients, whatever those are, and makes them taste incredible. So there are those that are kind of down the path of more Hawaiian ethnic kind of food with the little additions of other things, or me who takes my Texas roots and then takes the Asian food and mixes them together to make an Italasia pasta, or, you know, a Asian duck tostada. So it's that kind of thing. So I always say it's like if you took a big table and put all the ingredients that I use from Texas, and then, you know, I went to Europe a lot, so the European ingredients, all the Filipino foods, all the Japanese foods, all the Hawaiian food. If you put all of that on a table, and then you had a chef go and say, pick 10 ingredients and make something. And they pick different ingredients from different ethnic backgrounds and turn it into something incredible. And I think that's what kind of set us apart from just Pacific Rim cuisine, was the usage of taro and things that nobody else was using, you know. So to watch the evolution of the food here, because I came, you know, I was a diner for a lot of years, and the food was terrible. I mean, Longy's. It was long.
Chef Alan Wong said this in the interview, but he said, like, there was this old joke that the best food in Hawaii was like on the plane ride here. So,
oh, that's it. Yeah, but it kind of was, you know, because I tell the story how if you went to the fanciest restaurant called La Perouse at the Intercontinental Hotel back then, and you ordered mahi, you would get it. First of all, it was a frozen piece of fish, and I knew that because a friend of mine was a waiter there.
Yeah.
So a lot of the fish we were getting was frozen. It wasn't even fresh off the boats. And then they'd cover it with this thick white sauce, you know, probably to keep it from tasting like it had been frozen. I don't know.
Yeah,
but it just wasn't the freshest, best food you could get here for years were in your friends' houses, and they cooked it themselves.
Right.
Because they had gardens. I'll never forget the first upcountry artichoke, Kula artichoke I tasted. It was like the leaf had so much meat on it, and it had so much flavor that I will never forget that artichoke, right? And had many after that, and grew my own after that. But, you know, it's the fresher, the better. Now, we're still not, I mean, obviously, we can't be 100% self-sustaining at this point. I think we're so much better. I mean, if you could see the farmers markets now here, well, in all the islands, but the farmers market in upcountry Maui, it started out with maybe 8 or 10 tents, and now you can't even find a parking place to get into it. And people are selling their homemade breads and foods and eggs, and it's a whole different story.
Yeah. That
being said, it means we have to be on our game.
Yeah.
Because people in the last, you know, Hali'imaile is going to be 33 years old in October. From when I started and now, the knowledge that the everyday normal person has about food is over the top, so much more.
Definitely.
You know, the Food Network came along. Everybody knows a lot about food. Well, they think they know a lot about food. But
everybody has an opinion too, so
everybody has an opinion, and you know what? It's made our job a little harder.
Sure.
But you know, it's their knowledge helps us do what we want to do. You know, and it also keeps us on our toes. Where you know, you can't serve a freaking bad tomato.
Yeah.
You know, and like I said, until I have 2 or 3 guys who have over the years been my tomato farmers, and oh my God. And when they're out and I think I have to put a mainland or a, you know, off island tomato, not that they're not good, but how they have to ship, obviously it's not perfect. I just cringe, you know? So, from that, it's, you know, the quality of what we have here, if we could just have a lot more of it, it would be great.
Yeah. I'm curious. So, you know, you come across, you were basically alluding to this earlier when you were explaining, but you come from Texas, you come here, and you come across these different vegetables and dishes that you would not be able to have in Texas, especially at the time in the 70s, 80s. Was there anything that really, really stood out to you? You go like, oh my God, this vegetable has so much potential, or this ingredient has so much potential?
Well, it was all those things. Taro, oh my goodness, breadfruit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I love breadfruit.
Yeah.
Don't use it as much as I should, and maybe when we reopen, because now there's you have access to it a lot here.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, it was the fresh fish. I have to say, Texas.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if we ever in Dallas, and there was a little fish market that my mother went to,
mm-hmm.
but I don't think that fish was ever really fresh,
yeah.
right? That you could eat raw. I mean, I had probably lived here a year or two. I had poke, raw fish. I'm going to eat raw fish. And then we would go out fishing, and we would catch a tuna or an ono. And even though the guy'd go, oh, we shouldn't cut in, it's got to rest, blah, blah. We were hacking that thing up and eating that tuna. That was like minutes.
Oh, so good.
And there's shoyu and there's wasabi on the boat, and there's nothing like it.
Yeah.
So, but I'll never forget going through Afoops, which is this little market. I can't even think now what was there, all the different cabbages and the different radishes, daikon. I mean, I hadn't seen any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Of course, now a really good mango, I didn't know what a really good mango was until I ate a Hayden mango.
Yeah.
That was like perfectly ripe, not picked green, but picked, and it was ripe.
Yeah.
A really good papaya. It's all those things. The one thing, and I still do, although there's no pineapple, mm-hmm. I lived surrounded by pineapple fields for 20 years, almost 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
To have a really good pineapple, and I've traveled all over the world, and I try pineapple everywhere because I keep saying there's nothing like a Hawaiian pineapple, mm-hmm. and there isn't. Thailand can say they have it. Chile, any of those South American countries, no. Nobody has a pineapple as sweet as ours.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting how, things like, for example, poke, or even like kind of similar in a general sense, like sashimi and even sushi to a certain extent, didn't really start to pick up on the mainland until like maybe 20 or 30 years after you came here, right?
Okay. So I was serving, one of the dishes at the restaurant, which is like a signature, I do a sashimi Napoleon, and it's like wonton, crispy wontons. And then in between is ahi tartare and regular plain thin strips of ahi and smoked salmon with a wasabi vinaigrette, right?
Oh, so good.
I'm telling you, and shiso leaves and daikon sprouts, and it just came about one day because I had smoked salmon, I had this, I'm plussing around with stuff, and this comes out of it, and it is to die for. Yeah. And that's been on the menu since, sushi's just, I think really in the last 10 years maybe, has really become, and I hate to say it, I can't eat sushi from a supermarket. Yeah. I just can't bring myself, and I have had Foodland Farms poke bar stuff, but I just I want to go buy the perfect piece of fish and make my own.
Right.
Because then I know how fresh that fish is.
Definitely, yeah. Huh. So I'm curious then. You like you said earlier, you worked for 20 years as the executive chef at Hawaiian Airlines, right? What is the approach to designing, to managing this sort of food for an airline? How does the approach differ from your normal, restaurant, or like what you were doing up until then?
Well, it has nothing to do with food you serve in a restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
What it has to do with is having a knowledge of catering, where, I have my catering business. I've done 5,000 people at track field, right? I've done 1,200 people in a field where, unlike the mainland, we have a big tent that's our kitchen tent, but we don't have a kitchen set up. It's piecemeal. It's like we bring in refrigeration, and then we bring in some, wok burners and use those to cook stuff. It's knowing what to serve, where you're going to cook something, then you have to chill it, then you have to reheat it. So it's knowing how to cook it to begin with, right? And so I started putting a lot of braised meats on the airline, because we all know if you've ever been in first class and you get a filet, it doesn't work unless you on Hawaiian from me, because I literally, there are certain regulations, right, that you have to cook the food to a certain temperature.
Sure.
And thankfully, at one point, Hawaiian was okay with signing off that I was going to have those steaks cooked very rare. Then they're chilled down very fast in a blast chiller, which usually takes all the juice out of something, which is why you always get dry food.
Oh.
You get dry food on the airplane, and it's because they cook it to done before they blast chill it. So it's already way cooked, all it should be. And then you're going to take it out of that blast chiller, put it into a chilled airline cart, and then you're going to reheat it. So there's no way it's going to have any flavor unless you make a deal where they would cook the steak rare, they would blast chill it, they would put it in. The flight attendants, I would serve medium rare filet and medium rare lamb rack, because I didn't overcook it to begin with. And then when I was doing the airline food, I met with all the flight attendants. I would fly on the flights. I would get in the galley, and they would all talk among each other and go, "Hey, if you do it like this, the passenger's really happy because the food comes out great." So, and having enough sauce on something, and you have to over flavor, because when you get up to 30,000 feet, the flavoring you're going to put into something on the ground is going to taste very bland,
right?
Because of the the height. You're at 30,000 feet, so it takes that takes away the flavor of the food and the pressurized cabin and whatever it is. So it took me 2 years to really figure it out. And then I got it figured out, and we won tons of awards, and the food was great. And I wish they'd get back great food on airlines, but there probably won't be any food on airlines anymore for a long time.
Yeah.
Sandwiches, maybe.
Right. Yeah.
Handed to you with gloves, with a tongue, with a face mask.
Yeah. No, it's always, generally, expectations are not quite that high for airline food, but when you get a nice meal, it's always just a nice little extra perk, a nice little bonus, right? You're always happy about it.
Okay, I'm going to tell you a great little story, and I've got a few, but the chairman of the board of Hawaiian Airlines was on a flight, sat across the aisle from a man and his son, and he witnessed the man tell the flight attendant, he goes, "I don't know if you've ever had this request, or I don't know if you can do it, but my son didn't eat his meal, and it was so good. Do you have a doggy bag? Can I take it home?"
Wow. I've never heard of that.
I got a call the next day from the CEO at the time saying, this is what I just witnessed. So bravo to you.
Wow. That sticks with people. Like, people remember those little things. So.
Oh yeah. Well, I didn't want average food on the plane. I wanted people talking about it. And I don't think I've done the food for maybe 5 years now, maybe 5 or 6 years. Yeah. I still have people, if I'm on a Hawaiian flight, come up to me, besides the flight attendants and the gate attendants, and say, "Oh, we wish your food was back on the plane." So it's a good feeling. It's a good feeling to know that somehow you conquered that mountain.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, I mean, I could keep listening to your stories for hours. I love them.
36 years of doing this, there's a lot of stories.
Well, then maybe we can talk again sometime. And I'm looking forward to when I can go over to Maui and check out that crab dip and the what was it? I forgot the name.
The Napoleon.
Yes. Yes.
The sashimi Napoleon.
Oh, that sounded so good. Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that. But in the meantime, of course, we will put all the information to all the links and the meal kit and all that stuff in the description so people can check that out. And
just check people's websites. If you do nothing else, if you want to know about your restaurant,
mm-hmm.
The minute restaurants are going to open, their websites will tell you that they're going to open.
Yes.
I'll be the first one to put it up. So whether it's my website or somebody else's,
mm-hmm.
and we all want to open. We're all chomping at the bit to open.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. And we're all looking forward to it. So thank you so much for making time. I really enjoyed talking to you.
I love that you laugh at everything I say.
Well, you say such funny and amusing and fun stories, so I have to. I can't help it. All right. Thank you.
Bye. Aloha.